Well, hello everyone, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Before I do, I'll just reintroduce myself. I'm Dr. Toy Hirschman. I am the CEO of the National Consortium for Entrepreneurship Education. And I want to state from the top, he texted me and made me do it. My co-host Tremaine Davis sadly is detained somewhere, trying to get home. He had some flight delays and things, so sadly he couldn't get on. He was very upset and sends his love. So you got me. But this is going to be so much fun because we have an absolutely amazing guest this evening. She is going to blow your mind, folks. I am going to introduce my new friend Dawn, and I brought up her bio. So give me one second. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about Dawn. So Dawn Myers is a founder and CEO in the hardware, CPG, and retail space, and a DC region ecosystem builder, having held several leadership positions in nonprofits in the tech and startup spheres. She started her company, The Most Inc., to make products to meet the nuanced needs of women of color through physical products, but engineering and manufacturing tech-enabled hardware takes an incredible amount of capital and training. So Dawn had to get creative to raise funds to surmount the heightened barriers to entry in this space, and quickly found herself advising and coaching other women on how to work with what they have to get what they need. Along the way, she acquired a passion for helping founders learn and grow in entrepreneurship. I love it. A Howard University JD and adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at Georgetown University, she is committed to creating quality programming for founders striving to innovate for their communities. Dawn was named one of Washington, D.C.'s tech titans by the Washingtonian, and her startup was named one of Washington's top 21 startups to watch by the Washington Business Journal. She has negotiated partnerships with and secured funding from the world's top manufacturers, including Dow, Procter & Gamble, Sephora, and Glossier, for her patented technologies in the personal care and beauty space. She is among fewer than 100 Black women to have secured over $1 million in venture funding, and has secured investment from the space's most elite investors, including Mark Cuban and Emma Grede. I can just drop the mic there, I think. That's it. We're done. Wow, that is so cool. And because I had an insider peek, I know it gets way cooler. But Dawn, thank you so much, Dawn, for being here. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So excited.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is so amazing. And I just want to thank the young people in the room. You guys have so much going on. I know we have a lot of university students. And like I said, you guys got a lot going on, and it just means a lot that you guys are here. And I want to make sure that this is value packed for you. So please don't hesitate to ask questions or jump in. Like I said, I want to make sure that you guys are getting value out of this.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this is the part where I shut up and I allow, and you get to please share it with our audience and our folks that are live. Please share your story. How did you get to where you are today? Anything you feel comfortable about with sharing with us.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it. So shutting up now.
Okay. Well, I don't want you to shut up, Toy. I want to make sure if, we veer off in the wrong direction, just please do feel free to redirect me. Again, I want to make sure that you guys get some value. But as Toy shared with you guys, I am a lawyer by training, which is odd, right? Because now I make hardware and beauty products, and how in the world does one go from one to the other? And the answer is through a lot of twists and turns. I'm going to start my story a lot earlier than I'm going to start at the end. And then I'm going to rewind and start way back at the beginning so that you guys can get some of the stuff that I think is going to be most important for you. So now I run a tech-enabled beauty, or a series of tech-enabled beauty brands. The Most Inc. houses two brands. The most kind of, I guess, prominent of those is Ritualist. That's the brand that went on Shark Tank, got some investment from Mark Cuban and some other really cool people, raised some venture investment, and is now kind of, growing and scaling, which is really exciting. But that's not really the interesting part, right? The interesting part is kind of how it all came together. So I'm from DC, and parents put a whole lot of emphasis on school and achievement, so much emphasis on school and achievement that I found myself having a lot of anxiety and pressure, and was always very goal oriented in school, right? Went to some of the top schools in DC, and went into, some of the top schools for undergrad. But I found myself just, one, really unhappy, and two, just feeling like a perpetual failure. Now, that didn't make any sense, right? When we think back to where I was when I was 25, I had graduated from Boston College, a pretty decent school. I had done all kinds of cool stuff. I had, gotten into law school. I had started law school. I had done things like mock trial and moot court, and I had done these really cool internships on the Hill and at the Hill, right, in politics, and I just felt like such a massive failure. In fact, after school, in fact, I'll tell you that when I started law school, I thought that I wanted to go to the State Department, right? That's what I absolutely knew I was going to do. I couldn't get into the State Department. Felt like a massive failure. I'm working, I'm taking all the tests, I'm studying, can't get in. And it doesn't make sense to me. Why is this happening? Right. So then I go to the Hill, right? I get into politics, and, I'm thinking that I'm going to get this amazing White House job. And so I'm working and I'm working my butt off. I'm working my butt off, and it's not working. And I can't get into that White House job. Why can't I get into this White House job? It felt like a failure, felt like a massive failure. Um, After 2007, 2008, the legal industry took a really big hit, and there really were no legal jobs. They were just kind of all wiped out. And so I went to work in China for a little while. Now, here I am, 25, 26 years old. I'm working in China because I can't find a position in my actual field that I've trained for. And I get it in my head. I'm doing business development work in China, and I'm teaching English. And I say to myself, I talked to some folks who had spent some time in China before I left, and they tell me, listen, if you can figure out how to play the manufacturing game, do as much work in manufacturing, figure out the game. If you figure it out, you win, right? So I go to China, and I say to myself, I'm going to be this big kind of manufacturing lady, right? Like, I'm gonna figure it out. And I'm maybe 26, 27 years old. I'm bopping around China with a head full of crazy afro hair. Nobody else looks like me anywhere around me. And I'm getting on the train, and I'm getting on the plane, and I'm getting on buses, and I'm going to all of these rural manufacturing facilities in Baoding, China, in in Beijing, in Tianjin, in Shenzhen. I'm going around, and I'm just trying to talk to whoever I can about manufacturing, to figure it out and to figure out how I can do some of the business development work that I'm doing in legal, in manufacturing. Well, I can't figure it out. It doesn't quite click. And again, I feel like such a massive failure. I end up coming back to the States, working on a political campaign, but then ultimately landing in a big law job, which felt also like a failure. Now, this is one of the most prestigious firms in the country, but it wasn't what I wanted, and it felt like I said, a failure. And so, I'm really depressed, and I'm really trying to figure out, what in the world am I supposed to be doing? And long story short, find an episode of Shark Tank one night. Working my big law job, I come home, I'm really tired, and I put on the TV and I see this episode of Shark Tank. And on that episode of Shark Tank, there's a woman who gets a deal from Lori Greiner from Shark Tank. You guys know Lori Greiner. She's been on for decades. I grew up watching Lori, and Lori gives this woman a deal who's developed this very simple hair care tool, right? Very simple tool. It was basically a curler, but the materials have been changed to make it easier for women to dry their hair while they're curling their hair, right? Very simple. And I said to myself, and this woman says, I just made $1 million over the course of 8 months. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And so I start thinking about what kinds of things I can make for people with hair like mine. And I just kind of came up with a concept, random concept. And I started thinking about, how does one build something like this? Would it look like? And then the next day, I go out to the store. I go out to CVS and I go out to Ace Hardware. I don't know if you guys have Ace Hardware where you are, but it's a hardware store. And you go in and you get all the combs and all the brushes, right? All the hair care implements. And then I go to Ace Hardware and I get all of the soldering irons and screws and tape and glue. And I come home and I make my first prototype, right? I just kind of ideate, if I have this problem with my hair and I want to solve it, what functionality would be needed? Let's think about that. Then I draw a picture and I kind of put the pieces together in my head. And then I go out and I get all these parts and I put together a real life Frankenstein prototype. And with that prototype, I did my own hair one time and I was like, this actually kind of works. And then I sent it to a friend of mine and I said, this actually kind of works. And, my friends, yes, Ace Hardware, Quincy. And so I went around I started to say, wow, we've got something here. But I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur, and I certainly didn't see myself as a tech lady, right? So I started going back and forth from DC to New York on the train with my little Frankenstein prototype and a really bad pitch deck. And I meet with whomever I can find on the internet. I go to LinkedIn, I do Google searches, and I just find whoever I can in the beauty industry. And most of those people looked at me and said, we don't get it, right? And that doesn't make it, that's shouldn't surprise anyone, right? There are lots of folks who work in big corporate and they're making a lot of money off of people who have all of this textured hair, but they don't actually understand this consumer or what she needs or what her life looks like, right? And so I took it to those executives and they said, we don't get it. This doesn't make any sense. And then I took it to a VP at L'Oreal. His name is Keenan Beasley. And Keenan was a Black guy with a daughter. He said, I get this. I struggle doing my kids' hair all the time. I totally understand this. This is genius. L'Oreal isn't going to make this, but you should go home and make this. And so that's what I did. I got back on the train. I went back to DC and immediately started fundraising and developing a pitch deck and developing IP around this concept that I had, right? And before I knew it, I had a company. All these years later, 7 years later, 6.5 years later, I have a company. And that company is replete with revenues and a team and press and all of these bits and parts, and it's a real live working thing. Now, why did I start off telling you about all of these failures? Well, the major parts of my company require intellectual property, fundraising. Fundraising requires a lot of pitching and going out and convincing people to give you money. It also requires a lot of legal documentation, and it also requires manufacturing and product development. Well, all of those things that felt like failures to me over the years were exactly the things I needed to put my company together. When I was going to the Hill and I was in politics and I was on campaigns, what was I doing all day? I was talking to people in the streets and pitching them on my candidate. I was constantly making a persuasive argument about my candidate and why you should vote for him. That legal job that felt like a massive failure and that I hated. That legal job was on the business side of the legal house. I wasn't doing legal issues. I was talking to clients. And what was I talking to those clients about? Why they should pay for our services. I was pitching them. By the time I got to entrepreneurship, unbeknownst to me, was an expert in pitching. During that time in China, went around and didn't become some kind of magnate in manufacturing, but I did make a lot of contacts and I did get a lot of intellectual capital about how to do manufacturing, how to conceive of a concept and get it to market step by step. I didn't realize that I was learning all of those pieces of the puzzle, but I was absolutely learning all of those pieces of the puzzle. When I was, in law school, I hated law school. I didn't want to be in law school. But those skills that I learned in law school allowed me not only to go out and make a persuasive argument and to pitch, it also allowed me to write up those contracts for my investors. It also allowed me to do some of the early intellectual property work, and it still allows me to think about our intellectual property strategy and to put strategies in place that keep the company protected. The point I'm making, ladies and gentlemen, is that every step of the way, sometimes it feels like a failure, but you just have to have a little bit of faith. You got to put in the elbow grease and you got to do the hard work, but you also have to have a little bit of faith that you're being led in the direction that's right for you. At every step in your life, there is something that you are getting. There is a lesson that you are learning. There is a skill set that you are acquiring. Sometimes there is an intuition that you are building that will inform where you will eventually land. And so I say all that to say, if you guys are in this room, you are in this room because you're high achieving people and you probably put a lot of stress and pressure on yourself to achieve. And you should achieve, and you will achieve, but you will achieve even without all of the anxiety. All you got to do is keep putting that elbow grease in. All you got to do is keep doing the work. The pieces do eventually fall into place. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pause and take a breath. And Toy, any interesting thoughts from that?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so great, Dawn. And I love that you touched on this, the idea of feeling like a failure. Obviously, you weren't at any step of the process, but I completely understand this. I completely understand this. And, I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes you don't, you kind of know that you're an entrepreneurially minded person, but you're doing all these things. And a lot of times, at least in my case, I was doing all the things that I was supposed to do.
Hmm,
you know, you're
that's right.
supposed to get this degree, you're supposed to do that. And it never, I felt the same way. I felt like this isn't right. Like I'm failing because I'm not doing my purpose. I never felt like locked into a purpose because I didn't feel like I was helping anybody or solving any problems. I was just a cog a lot of times in the system, but the same kind of thing happens. I was an engineer and I quit that and I felt, oh, that was a bad failure because like every male person, no offense to the men on here, wanted me and my family to be like, oh my gosh, female engineer.
Yeah,
I felt like a horrible failure, but those skills have served me in every single role. And then, on and on and on, like the same with with your story. It was just I was building to something. I don't even know that I found it yet, guys. So like this right now, Entre Ed might be a step. I'm not sure, but you always feel like you're building to, you are acquiring these skills for a reason, and they will come in handy.
that's
Um,
right.
Other side of that too is this idea that we hear a lot of times when somebody does strike out as an entrepreneur, feeling that kind of that imposter, like this is not my background. What business do I have to be here?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so I would
Mhm.
love if you could talk a little bit about that if you've ever had that experience.
Yeah, I didn't. I gotta be honest. I have never really had imposter syndrome here. I just knew. I have always had an intuition about my company, about this product, about the customer that I'm serving. And it comes from, I think, a place of being mission driven. I have always just, I got into the space, yes, because I wanted to help myself and I wanted to make this process easier for myself. But I solved that problem years ago, right? With my first, maybe not my first, but like my fifth prototype. We solved the problem. We had something that worked. I could have stopped there and I could have just gone back to my very well paid legal job and, eschewed all of the ups and downs and highs and lows and risk of being in the entrepreneur field. But I always knew deep in my heart that I was the person for this job. I just had this sense, this intuition, that I was supposed to be doing what I was supposed to be doing. Now, that did not stop other people from trying to tell me that I wasn't supposed to be doing what I was supposed to be doing. So many investors I can't even count, told me that they weren't going to invest because I didn't have the expertise. They weren't going to invest because I didn't know how to build product. In fact, I raised an entire round of funding. This was probably 2020, 2021. And those investors said, this is an entire, we're really excited about this product. We don't believe that you can raise a brand, right? What you guys don't know is that raising a brand is the easy part. It's the super easy part. The hard part is making the product. But they told me before we're going to invest, you got to go and raise a brand to show us that you know how to raise brands. And so that's what I did. I spent my own money raising a brand. And then guess what these jokers did? They didn't invest. Why? Because they didn't want to tell me no. They knew I had a good product. I made an undeniable case. But they didn't believe that I could pull it off. And so rather than telling me no, they sent me on a rat race when they never intended to do the deal. Right. And so people have told me, I've had investors tell me, you are going to fail, not some variation of that, those words exactly. You are going to fail. And so I say all that to say a ton of people will always tell you what you can't do, and they will project their limitations onto you, particularly when you're a woman, particularly when you're Black, particularly when you're a Black woman. However, it is your job to have that intuition about what you can and can't do and to fight through that and go right past it.
That's amazing. What do you think it is that stops people from doing that? That when, I mean, all of these are a lot of challenges, and you've gone through even more challenges to keep coming back, like to get knocked down, get up and keep go. I mean, do you
Yeah.
have something that other people don't have, or do you feel like that's something people can build in themselves?
I think it's something that you can build, but I think, listen, trial and tribulation is a blessing, right? I would never complain about my upbringing, but it wasn't a particularly robust existence, right? There were a lot of things that we didn't have. There were times when we didn't have water. There were times when we didn't have food, and we were kind of go around the corner. You have to go around the corner to some auntie's house to get your hands on some food. And so it wasn't always the easiest, but that makes you really, really resourceful. Things like my mother worked really crazy schedule. She always had 2 or 3 jobs, and it was usually at least me by myself. Sometimes it was me and a cousin or two, one of my younger cousins. I got to figure out how to feed these children. And so you get really scrappy really early, and you learn how to cook when you're barely tall enough to see over the stove, and you learn how to make ladders out of little things so you can climb your little body onto the counter to get up there and get the pots and pans. You learn how to make things out of no things. And that trial and tribulation just kind of built on itself, right? I went from trying to figure out how to take care of my family members to going into really challenging academic environments that I was woefully underprepared for. And then it becomes, okay, how do I catch up? Yes, there's working really hard, but then you start to learn about building relationships. You start to learn about how you study and how to kind of catch up a little bit faster. You start to learn about getting resources from your institution to supplement what you're getting in classes. And you start to learn how to pull all of these levers to make your thing go faster, whatever that thing is. And I'm still pulling those levers today. Those levers look different. Those levers are marketing levers and fundraising levers, right? But very different levers, but I'm still hacking a really big, difficult thing. And I think, you're given what you can bear at a young age, and you might have some trial and tribulation, and you might be tempted to think, why me? Why do I have to deal with this? Why do I have to go with this? But the reality is, those trials and tribulations are a gift. And the question is, what are you going to do with them? Are you going to tackle them? Are you going to let them take you down, or are you going to take them on? And I think my strength is that I always took them on. And because I took on one, the next one seemed a little less intimidating. I could take that one on too. Then I took that one on, and the next one seemed a little bit more approachable. I can take that one on too. And so you can always start that process. You can always, no matter how privileged you are, no matter what your life looks like, you can go and find the challenges. And I think that's the thing about my life, is that I go and I find the challenges. I look for the challenges. I took this on, yes, because it was a need and because the technology didn't exist. I also took it on because it was a hard thing that a lot of people said was impossible to do. And I said, I think I got a solution for that.
So great. That's just so inspiring that because that's a lot of times what gets in people's way, and and a lot of for people say, success is like the next step, like, you failed the very last time and it's the next fail, and then you just keep going.
Mhm.
Eventually you'll get there. But that's hard sometimes. It's hard for people to see that and to be resilient like that. I know that I'm much older than you, and it took me a long time to figure that out, where it was like you just have to keep going. If you know that something is right and you believe in it, you just have to keep going.
That's right.
That's
Yeah, I was actually just talking about this with another founder friend earlier today. And we hear this all the time. I think Jay-Z has a quote. Other people have said this a million times. It's really not about talent at all. It's really not about genius at all. It's literally just about who stays in the game. The person who figures out how to stay in the game and to be resilient enough to keep going, that person will eventually win.
amazing. So you touched a little bit on like the idea of networks and building and and the levers. Can you talk a little bit more about how important it is to build out that network, and you talked about being resourceful, and how, and even if you're not talking about dollars, but finding those resources in people or in groups,
Yes.
like talk about the importance of that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's really important. I think sometimes I think we have a little bit of not a little bit, we have a lot bit of an individualistic society. If you can't do it by yourself, then you can't do it. That's just not true, right? There are always resources. And even though we're much better capitalized today than we were a year or 2 or 3 years ago, I still, even today, just today, I had a conversation with my team, and we've got some marketing things that aren't quite working. And I said, well, we need to do this, and we need to put these programs in place, and we need to put these processes in place. And they said, no, we don't need to do that. We're doing all the things. The problem is that we don't have enough people. We're overstretched, and there's too much on our plates. We got to find more people. And I said, bet, right? So I actually, I called Tremaine and I said, hey, I need some interns. I can't afford to bring on another full-time employee, but we do need hands to just do some simple things. Who can I reach out to? And sure enough, he sent me over some names. I shot some texts to some other people. They sent me some names. We'll figure out who that candidate's going to be in the coming weeks. But the point is, sometimes you think that you have to build things up from the bottom by yourself. You don't. Sometimes you can just call on other people who already have the answers and plug into the resources that they already have.
Yeah, Jermaine's like that.
Mhm. He's good for that.
He can't get away from me now.
That's right.
Awesome. You touched on this just a minute ago when with you and your staff and everyone that are, you're doing this even though you've grown, scaled so much, you still stretched. So how do you manage that? How do you deal with that? You at some point, working 70, 80 hours a week is not sustainable. And that's a lot of that entrepreneur journey. You hear that where they worked so much and then got burnout and then you have to rethink it. And I was on a call earlier with an entrepreneur who was talking about how she physically made herself got sick because she just
Yeah.
worked burning the candle at both ends. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard, and there's no one answer to this. There's so many things that you have to keep in mind. Some of those is that, listen, the reality is that women-led startups and minority-led startups are perpetually and severely underfunded, right? And so there's a lot of pressure on us to perform like other companies are performing when we don't have the resources that other companies have. And so yes, you need to push yourself. Yes, you have to strive. Yes, you have to hit some bench stones, some pinch marks, and some milestones. And also, you can't possibly do what a company who has $20 million in funding has with your 1 million. It's just not possible. And so that's not true. I'm not going to say it's not possible, but it's almost impossible. And so you really, at a certain point, have to control your expectations. You might move slower, but moving slower is better than not moving at all, right? That's not the worst thing in the world, particularly in an economy like this one. The fact that you're moving at all is a big accomplishment. And so that's part of it, is just adjusting your expectations. Another part of that is, I can be burnt out. I don't want to be burnt out. But I can be burnt out. I can't burn my team out. If I burn my team out and they quit, then I'm by myself indefinitely, and then I'm never going to escape burnout. So you got to take care of your team. You got to make sure that they have what they need, and you got to make sure that you're providing a really great work environment for them. We don't do time off. We don't do, people naturally tend to say things like, oh, I need time off, I'm going to the doctor's appointment, but we don't require anybody to tell you why they need time off. Um, the kind of levers that we pull on are, here's what I need from you. Here's what is reasonable to expect you to be able to do in a certain amount of time. And here's the timeline that it's reasonable to expect it to be done in. And the expectation is that you get it done on your time. We're very flexible here, and that keeps a lot of people really happy. It gives them the freedom to raise families and to do their extracurriculars and just to sleep in when they want to and to take care of themselves and to have a good quality of life. So that's another one, is taking care of your team so that they can take care of you. The other part, they can only take care of you if you are vulnerable about your needs. That's really hard. As leaders, we tend to have a really difficult time saying, I need some sleep. I need to take the next couple of days off and I need you guys to cover for me. I can't do this thing right now. I need you to take it off of my plate. So being able to be vulnerable about where you need help is super, super important. And then the other thing is to have something that feeds you spiritually and emotionally. So for me, that is ballet and religion. Prayer really helps me keep my emotional life intact. Ballet gives me a creative outlet that helps me just kind of put down the day and completely refocus all of my energies to my inner life. It helps keep me physically fit so that I can physically handle the very physical demands of entrepreneurship. And so I say all that to say, I think we've named 4 tenets. There are probably more, but off of the top of my head, keeping burnout at bay is really tough. There are lots of pieces to the puzzle, lots of things to consider, but those are probably my top 4.
Great. I love that you do ballet. I do too.
Oh, that's amazing.
In my basement where no one can see.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
My boys think that it's hilarious, which makes it even better because when they walk
Yeah.
by and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?"
Oh, that's so
I'm going
funny.
to put the tutu on if you don't watch it.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Can I tell you about ballet and entrepreneurship for me?
Please.
Yeah, so uh ballet was actually a big part of how I got into entrepreneurship. So, as I mentioned to you guys, I was working in this big law job that I really hated and that was really just driving me into the ground. And I had just started adult ballet. I was maybe 29, 30 when I started. And I went into a class and got immediately hooked and just started taking classes all the time. And so one morning, I was so tired and frustrated and I hated my job. So I took off and I told them I was sick, but I went to ballet class instead. And I went to this beautiful, beautiful ballet class. It was, one of those rainy DC days, and there's a skylight right over top of where I'm standing at the bar. You can hear the trinkle of the rain on the skylight. And then we've got this beautiful pianist, and we've got this incredible ballet teacher, and it's just the best 90 minutes of my life. And I remember sitting there and thinking, my whole life should feel like this, right? Not just 90 minutes a week. I want my whole life to feel like this. A month later, I quit my job.
Wow.
And yeah, and what was amazing building in those early days, I'm still going to ballet class, but not like I was back then. Back then, I was at my 9:30 class 3, 4, 5 times a week, depending on what my body could handle. And I would go to ballet class, right? Where I could actually see the progress in the mirror, right? I'm doing this hard thing that feels impossible. I don't understand it. My body can't handle it. But week after week, you go to class and you start to see your leg get a little higher and you start to see those pirouettes start to turn into doubles and triples, right? And you can see your progress in real life in tangible form. And it was the most beautiful. After I leave ballet class, I go and I work the rest of the day. And it was this beautiful reminder every day that I can't see the progress in my business just yet, but it's there. And if you keep going, your leg is going to get higher and higher, just like it does in ballet.
That is such a cool, oh my gosh, that's such a cool analogy. Give me goosebumps because that's exactly what I do.
Yes.
Only again, where no one can see me in my basement. But yeah, it turned out to be a very kind of a centering thing, almost a moving meditation for me as
Yes.
well, where it's just a really great way. Plus, I'm in my 40s, and so like body parts were falling off when I would jog. I'm like, oh, there goes my knee. Sorry, knee.
Yes.
So it was a kinder way to treat my body. But it turned out, but I fell in love with it. I never thought I would. But that
So
is
good.
so great. So we have a lot of folks on here who are working really hard at school, but also have businesses and things on the side. So as someone who has a side that may turn into a full-time business, may not, it just depends. What
Yeah.
advice might you give some of those young folks that are, running a cosmetic company or a t-shirt business or an app or tech, that are doing it part-time and maybe want to make it bigger?
Yeah, I think what's most important is getting clear on your mission. What's your mission as a person? Your mission as a person is going to change and evolve over the years, but all you can really focus on is where you are right now. And make sure as you're kind of deciding the extent to which you want to change your kind of balance of life, whether you're going to move to full-time entrepreneurship, maybe you're thinking about putting more time into entrepreneurship. Think about your why. A lot of people get into entrepreneurship because it's fun to be called a boss. A lot of people get into entrepreneurship because a million different reasons. They think it's cool. They want to be super rich, and those aren't invalid reasons. However, entrepreneurship is really hard. It can be really taxing. There are up days, there are down days, there are negative days, as all of us know. And the question becomes, is this worth it? And the question to whether or not it's worth it centers around your mission, centers around your purpose. Is this doing something for me that kind of is deeper and bigger than just the revenue generation itself? Does this have the impact that I aspire to have in the world? Is this helping me build a skill set that's really important to me for my future goals? I don't know what those questions are exactly for you, but get clear on what your mission is right now and marshal that to your decision making.
Love it. I love it. Well, Dawn, I want to open it up to some questions. If anyone has any questions for Dawn, if you want to get the gallery view here so I can see if anybody wants to raise a hand up or put something in the chat, please feel free to do so. And as we're waiting for them to do that,
I have some question.
yes.
Like, so
Nice.
I didn't quite understand your product, but I guess it's like you started in 2022 or something, right? In that time.
Sandeep,
Yeah.
you're a little muffled. It's kind of difficult for me to hear what you're saying. Is there a way for you to maybe get closer to your microphone?
Yeah. Is it better now?
A little bit, a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We can't hear you, Sandeep.
Oh, I think we lost you.
So actually, yeah. So I microphone. Let me.
There it is. There it is.
Okay. Okay. Now it's better.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to put the microphone there. Okay. So I guess you started in 2022, right? About your company.
I started actually in 2018.
Okay. So right now I would like to understand if there is any specific areas that are pain points in your business, like customer data or supply chain or
Oh
any
gosh.
development. Is there anything that you would like to discuss?
Sure, sure. There's so many. The pain points, though, we have to remember are opportunities for improvement and refinement. Right now, for example, we just had a shipment of product land, and there's some electrical issues. And those electrical issues are very similar to some electrical issues that we had a year ago. And so it begs a question, right? We're spending money, a lot of money on some of this work, and it's consistently not being done up to par. So that means we're making a decision right now about whether or not we need to change some of our third-party service providers. And that's a big decision. You've got to go out and vet other service providers. You're taking a big risk. There's going to be a long onboarding phase where they're learning things and where they're inevitably going to run into difficulties and have to figure things out. And so you're almost leaving a bad situation to go to another bad situation in hopes that that situation may get better over time. And so that can be really painful, considering third-party service providers, but that's one thing that we're really kind of thinking about right now. Our biggest problem is always funding. We are a venture-backed company. We have a venture-backed model, and that model requires really rapid and aggressive growth. Achieving rapid and aggressive growth requires a lot of capital. Capital is not easy to come by right now. And so, given the market, given our positioning in the market, we are a CPG company, a consumer packaged good company. That can be a really tough business for investors to invest in. And so, the question for us becomes, how do we get scrappy about funding? How do we start to leverage revolving lines of credits with traditional banking partners that tend to be really risk averse when it comes to early stage businesses? How do we get them on our sides? How do we use our network to convince bankers that we're a good bet? How do we use what we do have? Our revenues may not be sky high at the moment, but my credit score is, right? So how do we leverage the few resources that we do have to get the resources that we need from really creative spaces? I could go on. The list goes on and on and on and on. There's so many issues. There are always issues. But those two are probably top of mind for us right now.
Okay, so that's nice to hear. So is there any way that data analytics and new technologies can help you in your business?
Yeah, data analytics is a big deal for us with respect to marketing because, as I mentioned, Sandeep, we don't have just $20 million to throw at a problem. We have to make sure that every penny is being used really economically and that it makes sense. We have to make sure that we're making data-driven decisions at every turn. And so one of the things that we're trying to put in place are tools that help us not only collect more data so that we can understand our metrics and where we stand, we also need tools that help us draw the right conclusions about that data. And so, yeah, there are a million ways in which data can be relevant to our business, some of which we're building into our product. So the next version of our product, we just had our new shipment of product, our new version of product land, but we're already working through the next version of our product, which will integrate kind of a data-driven recommendation tool for our customers. So that's obviously, doing a lot of data collection and a lot of data analytics, and there's a lot to be discovered there still. But yes, all of that is relevant for our business and quite frankly for every business right now.
Oh, nice. Yeah, actually, I was thinking of doing something as a service. I was thinking of starting my own business wherein I would provide services in this area. So that's nice to get your insights on that.
That's
Thank
a
you.
wonderful place to go into. Absolutely. We just talked to a consultant. She was an AI consultant. But anything that we can do around AI and data, both of those areas are super hot. So yeah, that's a great place to get into.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? Because I have a sort of a question. Just for fun, can you share a little bit about your experience on the Shark Tank show?
Yeah, Shark Tank was so much fun. I had a blast, and that's why I won. Like that's why I got the deal. I think it's interesting, right? Because I didn't go on to Shark Tank really thinking that I would necessarily get a deal because my product was early stage. We taped actually before we had even really launched real product. And so we didn't have a ton of sales. We were still kind of in beta phase. Our CPG product, which actually lands a lot better with Shark Tank investors than it does with venture investors. But because we were in the venture space, we had a much bigger valuation than they typically give out on Shark Tank. And so, the question was, are we going to get a deal that makes any sense for our valuation? So honestly, I went in there really no pressure because we didn't even think that we were going to get the deal. And so I was able to just go out there and have fun. And I think the fact that I was having so much fun and the fact that I knew my company in and out and could really answer tough questions with some degree of sophistication helped me get that deal. But I had a blast. I was only on the Shark Tank stage for maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, but it was the most invigorating 20, 30 minutes I have had in a very long time. Yeah, it was a treat. As I mentioned to you guys, I started my business after watching an episode of Shark Tank. And so it was such a full circle moment. And what was great is that I got to thank Lori Grenier. I got to thank her for investing in that founder and for seeing women's innovation and caring about the problems that matter to women. So that was a wonderful moment for me. I mean, it was just a wonderful experience.
Oh, that's awesome. That had to be so like exhilarating.
It was. It really truly was.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, guys, go watch the clip. It's on YouTube. It's really good.
It was a fun time.
Totally bossed it.
It was a fun time. And it was, if you're interested, it was episode 19, season 15, episode 19.
Awesome. So Quincy has a question. What software do you use and how do you get your data and keep up with your consumers and industry-wide customers, including the customers of your competitors?
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of intel on the customers of our competitors, to be perfectly frank with you. Sometimes we are able to run ads in such a way that we're able to piggyback on the momentum of other folks in our vertical. But we don't have a whole bunch of data on our customers, on our competitors' customers. We have quite a tech stack. So we use Monday to kind of organize, monday.com, to kind of organize our innards. We use Google and their kind of enterprise tech stack. But then most importantly, we use HubSpot. So HubSpot has a functionality where they allow you to hook in all of your social media, all of your email clients, all of your SMS clients, all the things. And you can see every time you send out an email, every time you send out an SMS, how many people are opening, how many people are clicking. When you use X verbiage, this is what your open rate and click-through rate is. When you use a different kind of verbiage, this is what your open rate and click-through rate looks like. And so it's a really great way to A/B test messaging and different approaches that really kind of help you understand how to refine your messaging and make it more effective. It also really helps us understand things like what our flow needs to look like. So in HubSpot, kind of once you put all these pieces together, you can start to move pieces around and start to see, okay, when we do this ad and then this email and then this SMS, we have this open rate. When we do this ad and this email and then hit them with another email, well, we have a different success rate. So it helps us understand kind of what the flow is and how our customer is thinking and how to move them kind of down the funnel to get toward conversion. So HubSpot, listen, we've got like I said, a pretty substantial text, Jesus, my brain is gone. We have a pretty substantial tech stack, but HubSpot is really kind of our go-to for data analytics.
That's great. I've looked into HubSpot for some things and not ready to pull that trigger yet, but we're not.
It's expensive. I'm getting a substantial discount because of some programs that I'm affiliated with, but if that weren't the case, I also would not be using HubSpot.
That's awesome. Does anybody else have any more questions? Because we're about at time. So if anyone wants to pop in, please feel free. But I am just, Dawn, thank you. Thank you so much. And
My pleasure. My absolute pleasure.
for me, this is like pajama time. So, but I just really appreciate it. It's great meeting you. And
It's so great meeting you, Toy.
glad that you could join us today. And
Yes, thank you for having me.
you again. And on another one of these, we're going to start doing these, you guys, just so everybody knows, we're going to start doing these weekly. I don't know the exact date we're going to start, but we'll do them weekly on Thursdays. And then also, please remember, I'll put it in the chat to go check out, if you haven't, the @Startup Innovation Center Instagram. Because it's very long, I'll put it in the chat. And we do give prizes and things randomly on there, and we really hope that you engage with the platform, because we'll put clips from this on there. We'll do all kinds of fun things. So Dawn, again, thank you so much, and I will send you everything from this, and we clip it up, and
Perfect.
so you can do whatever you want with it.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you guys so much for having me. I hope you guys got some value. Talk to you soon.
Just putting this in the chat. Okay.
All right, guys. Toy, I'm gonna head out, but I will see you soon. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you, Dawn. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.